Hi everyone, it's Stephen Schleicher for Digital Media Net, and today I'm going to run you through the new motion tracking feature in Cinema 4D R16. It's really cool, and here's just an example of what we can do. This is something that I just whipped up. There's a few little tweaks with the global illumination, but that's not what this project is about. This is about tracking objects into a scene without having to go to another software application, without having to go to a compositing application, doing it all inside of Cinema 4D. So let's go ahead and get started. There are a couple of ways that you can do the motion tracking inside Cinema 4D, but probably the easiest for most people is to use the full solve feature. So I'm just going to click on that, point it to my PNG sequence, so you can use a JPEG sequence, you could use a QuickTime movie. I just am going to use a PNG sequence. This particular sequence was shot using my GoPro camera on a DJI Phantom quadcopter, and it was shot over the summer. So what it's doing right now is it's loading in the image sequence, and then Cinema 4D is going to go through and it's going to do a 2D track of the entire scene, and it's just going to find points and it's going to track those points so that it has something that it can use, and then it's going to go in and it's going to do a 3D solve. It's going to then take the position data, the parallax data, as it relates to the points throughout time, and it's going to extrapolate the camera movement and give us a 3D scene. Now, depending on the length of your shot, depending on the speed of your computer and the amount of RAM that you have, it could be a very short amount of time or it could be a very long amount of time. It just varies. So while this is doing this, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, this scene will be set up and ready to go. All right, the 3D tracking is complete, and we're presented with this view that shows us the camera, and if we were to move around to this side, you can see that the camera actually does follow the path that the quadcopter took while it was flying over my neighborhood. And if we rotate back around and we zoom out, we can see the entire point cloud that was generated. Now, the green dots mean there's a solid track. The red dots, not so good of a track. But the one thing that I do want to show you, and we can go to a side view of this. Well, first let's go back and look at the camera view so that we can see what's going on. And if we go to the side view down here, you can see that the camera is level. And all of the clouds, all of the point distribution moves from the lower left and proceeds to move to the upper right, which doesn't really help us here because this area right here is the street and it should be level. Now, there is a constraint that you can use called a planar constraint that you can use to help level this out, but I found another interesting way that I think works a lot better and may help many of you out as you're using the motion tracker inside Cinema 4D. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on the motion tracker over here and then move to my rotate tool, which gives me a world rotation. So if I start going in now and start changing the rotation of this world, and we'll go right over here and we'll just rotate it down, you can see that the camera and the point cloud and everything rotates together. I'm actually going to change this to -16, okay, because that would be the angle that the GoPro camera was at while it was mounted to the camera. Now that we kind of have this leveled out, now we can kind of recenter the world and make sure everything fits. So what I'm going to do now is go in and create a constraint. And a constraint kind of locks things into place. If you remember from what you saw on this view, our horizon is still way up here and our street level is still way down here. So what I'm going to do up here in this view is I'm going to get to a place in my preview where, like this tracker point appears. And I'm going to go up to Motion Tracker Constraints and create a position constraint. And then I'm just going to select this motion tracker and then give Cinema 4D just a moment to get itself all oriented. And now you can see in our view that our target, it's getting pretty close to being, in fact, I'll just go ahead and zero this all out down here, to being in the exact right place that it needs to be. And again, I've moved the entire world to the position that it needs to be. And if we go back here, we now should have something that aligns pretty closely. I'm going to click off, and we're just going to load in a cube really quick, and we can do a, oh wow, this cube is way too large for this world. How can we fix that? Well, here's where another constraint comes in. I'm going to go ahead and select my motion tracker, go up to constraints, and this time I'm going to use a vector constraint. And I'm going to now pick 2 points that are on the same plane as one another, and I'm going to try to define the length of that space. Now, if you were out on the shoot, you would know what this length is. Here in this shot, we have 2 really good points right here on this truck. So I'm going to click this point and this point. And then over here in our vector constraint area, I'm going to change the axis to X, because this is the X axis. And I'm going to change the length to known. And that's about, I don't know, I'm going to say it's about 8 feet. So that's about, what, 305 centimeters, something like that. Now, when I want to add my cube in to my shot, my cube is added in, but oh man, something else is way off. Well, part of the problem that we have here is that we'll undo this twice. Part of the problem is in this vector constraint, we'll go over here to our side axis and zoom out. Oops. Is that our world done flipped upside down. That's not what we want. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on this reverse axis button, and that puts everything back to normal. So sometimes this happens when you're working with your tracker. Maxon was really great in putting this reverse axis in here. Now when we go back in and we add our cube, boom, there it is. And it looks like everything's pretty right. I mean, you can see up here in our tracking, in our grid, that it's lined up with the horizon. Now, granted, it's warped a little bit, and that could cause some problems when we render out if this, in fact, let's go in and look at our cube. This could cause some problems if we don't have everything aligned just right. So I'm going to move this. In fact, let's go back to our side view and make sure that we're actually right on the horizon line, which we're not, or right on our ground plane, which I can see that we are not. So I'm just going to simply move this up. And I probably will scale this down just a little bit. Let's scale this down, move it back down onto the ground plane. And then we'll come back up here. Now, it's just, maybe it's just me, I don't know. But when I'm looking at this area, especially with this barrel distortion that's going on with the GoPro, I don't see a lot of that distortion going on with this cube. I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but for my peace of mind, I'm going to go back to my motion tracker. I'm going to go back to my reconstruction tab, and right here where it says camera settings, I'm going to change this from unknown but constant to known and constant. And I know for a fact from doing some research online that the focal length for the GoPro Hero 3 Black, which I'm using, is 14 millimeters, okay? And I know that the sensor size is 1 and 2.3 inches, or as that equates out to millimeters, to about 11 millimeters. And I'm going to give that again just a second for my system to catch up. But now when I go back to me, there looks to be a little bit more curvature to this. Again, this could just be in my mind. Maybe it's actually not going back and reconfiguring this world, but at least I certainly feel a lot better with this shape. And now we can just pretty much move this cube anywhere. Move it right up here. And as we track through this shot, sure enough, that cube is locked into position and follows along with the movement of the camera in the scene. And that's really cool. Now, what else do we need to add to the scene? Well, let's go ahead and add a plane. Okay, our plane comes in, and I'm going to size it up. In fact, I may just make it a little bit thinner so that we get something that is the size of the street. All right. I'm going to slide this down because I know that we don't need a lot of shadow area over here. Now, if we render this, it doesn't look good. This isn't going great at all. Well, again, let's go back over to our motion tracker. Let's go over to our footage, and now we can click on this Create Background Object. You could do this actually at any time, but I think it's a little bit more dramatic this way. Because now we add in our background object. When we render, there's our background and the two objects that we've added in here. The other thing that works really nicely about this, especially if we're going to use the plane as our shadow catcher, I'm just going to go ahead and take my background surface that was created automatically and apply it to the plane. And then I'm going to go down to the projection and change it to frontal. And then I'm going to apply a compositing tag and turn off composite background or turn on compositing background. We can render again. And now, you know, we don't see the plane. It's there. If we add a light to this scene, I'm going to raise this up pretty high and maybe just off to the right a little bit. Let's turn on our ray traced hard shadows. Render this. Now we get a shadow that's pretty much in line with the others in the scene. We're not really worried about shadowing so much. I'm just showing you how well this works together. If we go into our render settings, we can add in some ambient occlusion. We can add in a global illumination. We can change the light shadows from hard to shadow mapped if we want. And now we've got shadows that still look really kind of cool. We can add a new surface if we need to. And on this surface, let's just make it, a little green. Yeah, let's make it green. Like a sea green. Maybe bring this green down so it's kind of dark. Yeah, maybe that blue will work. And then I can use the new reflectance feature in Cinema 4D R16 to go in and just add some Fresnel and reflection. And I'm just going to roughen this up just a little bit. Change the reflection strength down because I don't want it reflecting a lot of my scene. And then my layer Fresnel, I don't know, let's use, let's use milk. I don't know if that's going to have any kind of impact. This is more for me just goofing around and playing with what we're getting in our scene. Let's accept that and add that to our cube and render again. And there's our green block right there in the middle of the street. And really now we can add anything into this scene, any object that you've created. Certainly we won't add another square, but maybe we could add in a figure. We can scale it down, or maybe we want it to be gigantic. Land of the Giants. Pull it up above the plane. Move it into position. It'll bring this forward. And you can see that that figure is just locked into that shot throughout. We give this a quick render. And there it is. It's really cool. In fact, we'll just add the same surface onto our figure. We'll go in and do a physical render. We could probably should add in a sky. And the sky, will put a compositing tag on it and turn off scene by camera. Render that and see what we come up with. If I had a spherical image map of this area, we could incorporate that into our shot. But there we go. That's looking really cool. And again, this is all inside of our animation package. The big benefit here is we don't have to send it somewhere else and outside and worry about conversions and tweaking and all this kind of stuff. This is locked in place. This is really cool, and I thank Maxon for putting this in Cinema 4D R16. I hope you enjoyed this overview of the motion tracking feature of Cinema 4D R16. If you have any questions, just use the comment section below, and we'll be back next time to look at some more features of the motion tracker, as well as some ways that we can incorporate other objects into the scene, bring in an HDR image, light this scene up right, and make it look really good. Thanks for watching.